Hey everyone, welcome to our very first Tell Me About It Thursdays. I'm Rhiannon and I am the Executive Director of the Berrien County Historical Association. And we're pretty excited to have an opportunity to challenge ourselves with some new things here at the museum. As most of you may already know, we are closed to the public per executive order, tentatively through the 13th. There is a possibility we may be closed to the end of the month. And our staff is trying to find new ways to engage you and continue to connecting with you, which is our responsibility as a museum. So we decided that in normal circumstances, I guess, or previous normal circumstances, we would have given opportunities for members or select members of the public to come in and join us and learn more about our museum through things like behind the scenes tours, getting to know staff. Well, we can't do that now, mostly because the place will tell you to go back home instead of coming here. And so instead what we're choosing to do is to do this series, and each week for the rest of the month, so that's going to be 5 full sessions between now and the end of the month, we're going to talk about different parts of what a museum are, what we do, the different aspects, how we do things, and more importantly, how some of the skills that we use can be used for you guys to better preserve your own personal histories. Not every history needs to go into a museum, and not every artifact goes into a museum. Not every story gets to go into a museum, but sometimes those stories are important to your families, and we'd like to go ahead and give you that opportunity. So this week we're talking about what is a museum and what it's like to work in one. And I can say right now it's rather isolating. I'm the only one here on site, and my staff is at home like they should be, protecting themselves from situations that we are experiencing right now. The International Council of Museums has undergone some changes in the definition of what is a museum. And they consider it a nonprofit organization that is permanent, and it's an institution. So that means they are always around, probably have a physical location. And it's our responsibility to be in service with our societies and communities and their development. By doing this, we can do things like acquire, preserve, research, and exhibit items in our collections, and that is depending on what type of museum we are. That is, are we a history museum? Are we a science museum? Are we an art museum? Are we a children's museum? Our goal is to create connections for you with our tangible and intangible parts of our heritage. We don't think about it, but communication with our family and friends, that's an intangible thing. Once the conversation's over, unless it's been recorded, it's gone. All we have is our memory of it. But our goal is for education. Our goal is for the study of whatever subject we are talking about, and of course, for the enjoyment. Debating on what roles we play in society, and over the last 20 years, society has changed enough that we as museums need to challenge what we're doing for you. So we are, by definition, a history museum, and we are also, by definition, a historic site. So that means that we have more than one building. I have worked in a variety of museums in the course of my career. I've worked in a children's museum. I've worked in an art museum. I've worked in a historic site up in New York, and I've worked in a traditional museum gallery style space as we now know it. Museums are changing though. It's not just physical locations, and that's why the ICOM is trying to change this definition, because what we're starting to see more is things like pop-up museums. We're starting to see online and digital spaces. Sometimes they're traveling. Maybe they're not necessarily in a physical building, but they could be in a mobile unit or school bus, or maybe they're more of a travel kind of entity that we send out into the community. So what is it like to work in a museum? I think it's the biggest question that we get. How does it work? The thing is there's no average day in a museum, and each museum has its own challenges. So when it came on from on high for us to close down for 2 weeks before the extension was added, many of my colleagues in other museums, even here in Michigan, were like, this is a bad news for us. We rely upon admission fees. We rely upon people coming to our organization and supporting us. Unfortunately for us, we cannot tell a lie. We on average see maybe 2 people a week. So us closing to the public wasn't as big of a blow to us. We don't charge admission currently, and we don't have a lot of physical visitors. A part of this is because over the years, we haven't had a whole lot of things going on to drive people into our doors. But this is kind of harsh our buzz a little bit because now all of these programs that we did have planned and our exhibit downstairs that we have planned is now on hold or being shifted or in some cases outright canceled. The work that we do depends on a couple of things. Number one, the type of museum we're in. Are we in a history museum? Are we an art museum, a children's museum? Are we a science or a natural history museum? Are we a planetarium, an aquarium, a zoo? Are we an outdoor location with multiple buildings, a single building with multiple stories? Are we a single subject, or are we broad-based? So for example, you have museums that are on single subjects like the Cowboy Museum in Oklahoma or the Tenement Museum in New York City. You have people who cover a variety of subjects for a particular location, like us, Berrien County. But then you have larger museums that go regional, such as Minnetrista Cultural Center, which oversees East Central Indiana and into Ohio a little bit. There are some institutions like the Smithsonian that take a much larger, broader narrative. So the work that we do depends on the kind of work that we are presenting. An art museum is going to approach it. It's like the Crassel in St. Joe is going to approach their work a little bit differently than our work here versus, say, a maritime museum like in the Michigan Maritime Museum. And all of these things play a significant role in how we choose to operate. So our operations are a staff of 4. It's myself, a curator who we will be hiring soon, and our operations coordinator. And those 3 positions are full-time, meaning we work 35 or more hours a week. And then we have a part-time caretaker. Her name's Lori, super awesome. And it's her job to make sure everything is clean. One of our bigger battles in preservation is obviously environment, and that includes things like animals and bugs. So by keeping the grounds clean, we're reducing the chances of damage to our collections and exhibits. In our organization, we kind of share a lot of the daily operations. So the majority of the social media is helmed by myself. Press release is written, so any typos are mine and mine alone. We work jointly together on the docket, which is our monthly newsletter for members. If you'd like to get it, please become a member. It's $20 for an individual and goes up from there. We also have social media. The majority of the social media is on me, but the curator does the Flashback Fridays, as well as the coordinator who does the Shopping Wednesdays to kind of highlight what we got in our gift shop. So we made those changes and had all new stuff. Collections are under the purview of the curator. The exhibits are under my purview, but we work with the curator to get what we need. So if I say, hey, I need stuff about the parks, or I need stuff about voting, or I need stuff about women's voting rights here in Southwest Michigan, or Christmas, or cooking, or whatever that subject may be, they will be the ones to go search it out in our collections, for the objects and pictures and other artifacts that we need to make that exhibit a reality. Our coordinator was basically a front desk worker and kind of oversaw a few things here and there, but we have changed that. The coordinator currently oversees our volunteers as we start building our volunteer program. They oversee our community service folks who are voluntold they have to come. We also have her oversee a couple of our programs as needed, so she'll help work programs. We, for the sake of sanity, divvied up our bigger programs, and she oversees Pioneer Day. Unfortunately, we are going to have to cancel Pioneer Day as of today because schools are now closed to the end of the year. We jointly work on programming. So if I need something done for a program, a setup or a tear down or someone to work it, everyone helps out. We also jointly share covering the front desk. So if somebody can't be in here, someone else has to cover it. We handle phone calls and field questions, answer stuff on social media. Our curator handles most of the research requests and processing any of the donations that come in. We have a lot of them. Some of them have not been processed in 3 years, but we're trying to work through that. So most larger museums, so for example, the Field Museum or the Smithsonian or the Met, they're going to have these these categories. We're going to have these departments, and each of these departments have a head and then subgroups. We all share it here. The goal is to make sure that not one person gets burnt out or feels that they're not part of the conversation. It's also important to make sure that we always have something covered. So if we need help with little things like folding envelopes, we'll get Lori involved. But bigger things like installing the exhibits, that's my responsibility. The other things that I do as the director is, in addition to overseeing my staff, making sure our operations are being covered, making sure we're in communication with our friends and our patrons and our sponsors, is also development. So development is a big fancy word for fundraising. And so I work with our donors, I write grants, I set up fundraising campaigns. So right now we have our 45 for 45 245 campaign, and finding unique ways to connect people who want to give money to the projects that they're most passionate about. We also spend quite a significant amount of time working with our partners. So we have a very good working relationship with most of the museums in Berrien County, such as the Niles History Center, the North Berrien Historical Museum, and the Heritage Museum in St. Joe. And our goal is to continue to work with those organizations. They have been very good partners in helping me get familiar with some of the history in the area, and they've been helping me fill in some of the gaps I have in my own collections for the exhibits I have planned this year. In fact, right now I have two partners that people wouldn't normally think about when we're talking historical partners, but Warren Dunes State Park and the Berrien County Parks system are both on display downstairs, or well, they will be when I get the exhibit taken care of. They were our partners, and I said, hey, would you like to be a part of it? And they said, yeah, it's great. And so we can find partners in history everywhere. So developing those relationships, seeking out those donations, seeking out those items that we need for programs or exhibits, that's part of my responsibility. Our work here is about creating an exciting adventure for you guys. And for the most part, it becomes a bit of a challenge. 2 years ago, the board of directors undertook a very large strategic planning session to create a strategic plan for 2019 to 2024. This strategic plan was entitled An Open Door to Berrien County History, Experience the Life. And it was fascinating to having these conversations with our volunteers, with our members, with our major stakeholders here in the village of Berrien Springs, in the county, school, the public in general, to give us out of us. What were they asking for us? We're very honest with what they wanted. And they wanted to see more things, more engagement with the taste, Berrien County history, and all of the broadness that it provides. So that was my challenge when I was hired last August, was to take this desire of all of these people and make it a reality. So this is where having my staff is very important. I went ahead and started planning all of these programs, several which are gutted right now here in April because of the situation, but creating these programs, and we went from X number of programs in 2019 to almost 40 here in 2020. Now, we'll see how many of these programs are still going to be functional given this new world we are now in. But we also wanted to make sure we were telling different stories, and that was our big thing. We want to hear different topics. It was kind of the same topics over and over and over again, and unfortunately, that's not good. First of all, that bores people because it's stuff they've already heard before. Number two, it ignores a huge chunk of history that's here available to study. And finally, it doesn't challenge us as a staff to make sure that we are really deep diving into our collections and our archives to tell those stories. And so we decided that we heard the word diversity, different topics, different subjects, different types of programs, not just lectures all the time. Our property is a really good property for really different things. So I heeded the call and we created the calendar. The calendar was created by me and is worked in conjunction with my staff. Ultimately, I have to make the final decision on everything. So, well, Why not? That meant we expanded out our Thursday night at the courthouse series because we wanted to have more topics. And this year we dove deep in saying what topics have we not talked about here in Berrien County and what have we not talked about in these lectures. So we're very excited to explore different types of history here in Berrien County. So things like Jewish American history and African American history, that is respectively September and June, assuming everything goes okay. Talking about the fact that we have a lot of farms and roadside stands here in Berrien County, and kind of exploring the fact that approximately 46% of the land in this county is still used for farming. Let's dive deep into a significant impact on our economy and our daily living. So farmer markets and roadside stands in May, talking about all the things that we see on a daily basis and challenging that. We have, some old favorites, of course, like House of David, but we wanted to bring in other things. There's about 5 or 6 lecture series or talk series or roundtable discussions that I've gone ahead and put on the back burner so I didn't burn myself out or overwhelm you guys. But there's a lot of lectures that we have an opportunity to talk. We have Andrews University, we have Western Michigan. We have a lot of good universities and colleges in the area where we can absolutely tap into these really brilliant minds to come out and share things that are so endemic of our organization. Also, our exhibits. So we ended up planning for 7, and then that became 8. And so the again fell on me, but we went back into what people were looking for and things that were going on this year. Obviously, we felt we had to have a women's voting exhibit because it's the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And our secretary, Mary Ellen Drollett, had talked about how there was a lot of discussion on it and how important it was that we talk about that because Michigan was one of the first states to ratify the amendment. That's going to shift a little bit, but our goal is to still have that. I also realized that I realize that a lot of people don't know, but we're part of the county park system. In 2014, we were put under the auspices of the Parks Department. We're their 7th park. And I realized that we never talked about our cousin parks. And so A Walk in the Park was born. I love postcards, and I feel like they are some of the funnest things that we can have in our collections. And that's not just what are on the postcards, it's what people write within the postcards. And so that's how Wish You Were Here was born. The idea of the community curated exhibits was to give people an opportunity to share the stories that they felt was important to them and were part of a story that was not being told. That didn't work out as well as I had hoped for March, and likely we're going to have to forego our September one, but we're going to see on that. Again, as soon as Gretchen Whitmer tells me whether or not I'm closed for the rest of the month, I'll know. And so we wanted to talk about voting. It's a voting year and elections and all of the weird, fun, wacky things that come with that. It's not about politics, but definitely about elections. So by changing things up a little bit, we're tapping into current events, but looking at them through a historical lens. And that's the most important thing we can do in museums, is taking what's going on and saying, well, this is what used to be like. This is how we got to this point. So this is how elections currently run in our country, but this is how they used to run. And we often talk about mudslinging and, petty attacks in current politics. Nothing like it used to be, that is for sure. So being able to kind of compare and contrast the present, the past is an important part of what we do. Having interactives that allow for you to really dive deep into those stories, kind of fall in the entertainment value portion of it. And our goal here is to really make sure that we are reminding you that history is more than just names, dates, places, and military battles. It is an incredibly detailed story of humanity. And people always say, well, history is boring. It's not boring. It's being taught boring. Humanity is not a boring entity. We are engaging, we're exciting, we're dramatic, we're sad, we're tragic, we're angry, we're excited, we're all of these wonderful emotions, and those drive our stories. That drives how we act and how we interact with the world. And more importantly, that's how our stories are. And so our staff is very passionate about history, of course, and so we're very excited to be able to be in this field. This is a very difficult field to be in. One of the things we don't talk about as a organization to our outsiders is we're not paid very well. we work odd hours, and we're not always sure if the risks that we take are going to be good enough for the organization or if it's going to cause further issues. So there's a lot of risk aversion in here. I think the only people who are less risk adverse is insurance agents. We try to stay within what we know because that's what people like, but we can't stay like that. So our challenges now is to sit there and toss out the playbook and try something new. And our hand was forced with the COVID-19 situation because you can't come to me. You can't come and see my exhibit. You can't come and do research in my archives and collections. You can't come see a program that we're hosting. So a lot of what we're doing is rethinking how we connect to you. And so things like this program is part of that. We are looking to do a video series that explores the different buildings and some of the artifacts that we have in here, kind of a behind the scenes look at some of our more common artifacts. We have talked about doing more online sharing opportunities. So today, I stole an idea from a friend of mine who is a branch manager at the New York Public Library and uploaded for you guys a series. Allergies, guys, it's spring still. A series of photos that you could use for your backgrounds in your video conferencing from our collections. They are pictures from our collection. Some of them are on display that people really liked, and others have not been put on display yet. And I also did video phone backgrounds because I don't know about you guys, but I seem to be spending an awful lot of time on my phone. So bring a little bit of Berrien County pride in a historic sense to your digital spaces. Those are for free. We ask that you not take away our edging, keep our name there, how people know it's us, and share it. Please, they're on there. Please use them. Share it with us. Show us your screencasts. We'd love to see that. And we also would like to see you guys share more opportunities with us digitally, and we're going to do that through our Maker Monday. So beginning this Monday, running through all of April and all of May, we are going to do a week-by-week workbook well, technically it's called Michigan's Early Years, but it's basically early pioneer Berrien County, which is something we don't talk about enough here. We've got a giant cabin outside our building here that we don't really engage in, but for the most part, allowing for us to kind of explore what it was like. If you are in your 30s, your late 30s, possibly early 40s, and you are a huge fan of Oregon Trail, then this is your opportunity to do it in a physical capacity, in a less digital capacity, and to participate with your children. We encourage, whether or not you got kids, join us. Think about how you would have traveled from wherever your family came from. So each week there'll be a new post here on Facebook with an image of the page. You can easily right click and download that and print it out to work on it with your children or yourself or your grandkids or whatever. We want everyone to join us. And then on Friday we will post the answers for those that have puzzles. We also included questions to encourage conversation about that topic. We want to sit there and challenge people a little bit. These are kinds of questions that we would be asking students or visitors when they come to the grounds, and making sure everything is being interactive. So those are what we have planned. Our April programs are on, the later April programs are tentative, or as tentative as they can be. And then May, we're still trying to keep those in place, but we'll see what happens after this weekend when Governor Whitmer makes her next announcement. So those are the challenges we have at museums right now, and they're pretty timely. This is not the first time museums have had these kinds of challenges, but it does force us to rethink about how we're connecting with you, and I think that is a good thing. Maybe not for the bottom line, but it's good for us and challenges us as a staff to connect with you a little bit differently. Over the course of the next few weeks, these lectures, talks, conversations, however you want to call them, these videos will also include detailed subjects. So we're going to first of all deep dive into our collections, and then we'll go into archives. We'll go into our exhibits. One of the things I always get questions is, how do you hang your exhibit so nicely, and how can I do that in my own home? How do you prepare an artifact? How do you preserve paper? How do you preserve photos? And so all of these are questions that we get quite often that I would like to share with you because I think it's important. Not only do you get to see our collections and the challenges we have thereof, but also kind of how some of the things that we do can help you preserve your history. And then we're going to talk about fundraising and kind of the role fundraising plays in making sure that we are doing everything we can to meet our mission. And so we are hoping that this series will be a limited run through April, but we are hoping once we open back up to the public, we can start having these nights more often, having people come and get to see some of our artifacts and get a little bit of hands-on with gloves with some of our artifacts, so you guys can get a first-hand opportunity to what it is to be a curator or a program manager or an exhibit manager or whatever the title happens to be. So for those of you who've been popping in and out, thank you so much. It says I have 2 people who've been very loyal since the very beginning, so thanks, guys. I appreciate that. This guide will be posted available for viewing later, and we will also be sending it out via email on YouTube to those who are not on Facebook. So if you know someone who is interested, follow us on Facebook at Berrien County Historical Association. You can also follow us on Instagram, the History Center. However, that's kind of dead, so we're trying to work on that a little bit. And please ignore our website right now. We're in the process of changing it, so it's not updated. Most of the updates will come via emails. If you're not on our mailing list and would like to be, please shoot me an email at info@berrienhistory.org, and we'll add you to our general interest emailing list, and we'll be more than happy to make sure that you're getting those notes. If you'd like a copy of the docket, though, you got to be a member. So I think 30 minutes is more than enough to explain what we do here in museums and the work that we do. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off for this week, and we're going to dive deep into the archives next week and see what we can find and the roles that archives play in telling history. So from the Sheriff's Residence here at the Berrien County Historical Association, I'm Rhiannon Sisson. Thank you for watching.